Joining us now, General Paul Vallely. He's retired U.S. Army Major General. He's a senior military analyst for Fox News. He served in the Vietnam War and retired in 1993 as Deputy Commanding General Pacific Command in 2004, together with retired Air Force Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney. General Vallely co-authored the book Endgame, The Blueprint for Victory in the War on Terror. General Vallely currently serves as the Military Committee Chairman for the Center for Security Policy and has lent his support to the Organization of Veteran Defenders of America. In late 2013, he called for a march on Washington by patriots to force President Obama to resign. General, good to have you with us, sir.
Well, good morning, John. Happy to be with you in the great state of Virginia. I'm out here in Montana.
I know you're on Mountain Time, right?
I am.
Now, the last time I was in Montana, it was some time back, but it's such a gorgeous, beautiful state. I can see why people are out there. I was out there for a week for something and did not want to come back. It was so, and I said, if I ever were to move to the West, Montana would be the place. It's a gorgeous state.
Yeah, well, we're having a beautiful summer with lots of tourists up in Glacier Park, and it's a great place to live. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, so not too far from Virginia there, so I can understand where you're coming from.
You're right up the road. Now, we understand, General Vallely, recently you made the decision to endorse Paul Nehlen, who was trying to upset Paul Ryan in a Republican congressional primary on August 8th in the 1st District in Wisconsin. Paul Ryan, of course, Speaker of the House, has a lot of power. Why would you back the Nehlen campaign over the Speaker?
Well, there's a number of different reasons. First, I think I was the first general officer to endorse Trump for president, and as we've looked at the leadership or lack of in the House of Representatives, under former Speaker John Boehner and now Paul Ryan, we see that Republican weakness continues in the House of Representatives. And I think the American people see that as well, whether the Democrats or Republicans. But Speaker Ryan is not what I consider a warrior. I think he has bowed and given the Obama administration about everything they want, particularly on the budget. Now they will come back and say, well, we've prevented Obama from doing a lot of things, which they have. But that's what I call, John, a prevent. You have to be on the offensive. You got to be warriors today. We're at war not only to preserve the republic, but also to protect our borders overseas. But yet, with Obamacare and all the other things that you can list, we don't have enough time to enumerate them all this morning. But certainly, I don't see a lot of strength in the leadership. And I always challenge everybody, whether Democrat or Republican, that name me the 10 top warriors that are standing up for the Republican America as Americans first.
Well,
and by the way, I presented Donald Trump that theme about 3 months ago on papers I wrote in 2014 called America First. Be an American before you're a Democrat or Republican. That's what we need to focus on.
You're so spot on. Absolutely correct. Let's get to ISIS and what's going on in the Middle East right now and around the world. If Donald Trump were to become president and you were in the administration, how would you be advising a Trump administration in order to really combat ISIS in a meaningful way, sir?
Well, I have outlined a strategy and tactics to defeat ISIS. You may or may not know this, but I'm the only senior officer that's been inside Syria within the last 3 years. I went into Aleppo in 2013 with 400 men of the Free Syrian Army. I've been into the Middle East, trying to add up now 5 or 6 times in the last 4 years, into Istanbul, into Egypt, and so on. So I have a fairly good feel for what was happening over there at the time in 2013, as well as up to what's happening today. The strategy's got to be, and I don't want to give too much away, but basically you have to identify the centers of gravity of the enemy forces of ISIS. For example, Raqqa, Mosul in Iraq. You look at Yemen, you look at North Africa, you look at Libya, Somalia, and you draw circles around those. And there are only about 7 when you actually do it. And then you put together a combination of what I call joint strike force operations. That's air and ground, primarily special ops, and bring in the 7 countries that I've identified to be part of the attack on ISIS on those centers of gravity, preventing convoys from running, prevent them from moving anywhere outside of that perimeter. Basically, you lay siege to Raqqa. And I can tell you, having met with the Russians, we're not going to solve anything in the Middle East unless we work with the Russians. They are dominant over there now, and we can work with them. But this administration has not reached out to them other than through John Kerry and State Department, which has been totally ineffective. Mm-hmm. But you have to involve Jordan, you have to involve Egypt, you have to involve Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and get those countries to do special operations. And ISIS could be defeated in 90 days. You cut off the head of the snake.
When you say defeated in 90 days, though, General, I mean, they're recruiting everybody from all over the place. Wouldn't they just pop up somewhere else? Wouldn't it be just like whack-a-mole?
Well, again, when you decapitate, an enemy force, you take out its source of revenue. They need money, and of course, that's being produced out of the Middle East. Mm-hmm. Now, the refugee situation, where there's a higher percentage now than we thought of ISIS infiltration, following the infiltration doctrine of the Quran, that once you do that, then local police, the different sovereign states like France, Germany, England, then you've got to eliminate where they do the recruiting, and that's in the majority of the mosque. Mm-hmm. So it's just not a one-stage or one-part solution. It's multifaceted when you look at cutting off the head, and then you start cutting back where they can recruit throughout the various places throughout the world. And slowly but surely you can attrit them. But to knock out the majority of their centers of gravity can be done in 90 days. The other areas where they've already infiltrated will take time.
All right, General Vallely, let me ask you this. In order to execute your plan that makes a lot of sense to me, would we have to commit significant U.S. ground troops?
No, not at all. Less than 5,000 special ops, Rangers, Special Forces, Navy SEALs, along with the British Special Services. French have a great special operations force. So does Jordan. So does Turkey. And they've been trained up to a high degree in Egypt. So you could do some kind of an alignment of Egypt in the south with regards to Africa, mm-hmm. Libya, which is on the west side of Egypt. Mm-hmm. And so you can have an allocation of forces that focus on these, say, 7 centers of gravity. And once you do that, you basically lay siege to those. You shut off everything. And with precise targeting, you can take out the vehicles, you can take out the ISIS forces. It's all doable, John. It's all doable, and that's what's key to remember.
Okay, so, and that's basically Trump's plan, right, General?
That's what I'm recommending to him.
Right, so that's what you're recommending
to him.
Yeah,
he hasn't come out with his precise plan, but that's what General Flynn and I are basically recommending to him.
Okay, so let's get to the Nealon campaign. You've come out for Nealon. I think Ann Coulter is going up there towards the end of this week. I'm going up there. What chance does he have to beat Paul Ryan, in your estimation?
It looks better each and every day. Ryan, from what I've seen, is losing ground. Paul is executing a very vigorous, very positive campaign, and I think there's a very good chance. But again, when you look at politics and you look at the different campaigns throughout the country, you've got to look at where the strength or the weakness is within the government. And again, take politics out of it. if you start looking at the world through a reality prism rather than through a political prism, you get a whole different outlook how to solve America's problems. And I had an epiphany of this when I met with General al-Sisi in in Egypt a couple of years ago. And General al-Sisi turned to me, he was 6 feet away. He says, "Why does America always make its decisions through a political prism rather than a reality prism?" He said, "Here in Egypt, I've got to look at the Suez Canal. I've got to look at Libya. I've got to look at the Mediterranean. I've got to look at the border with Israel and the Sinai. And I tell you what, once you start looking at things, how to solve them, and take Republican out of it, take Democrat out of it, you come up with an entirely different solution how to solve our problems."
Right. When you stop looking at it through a totally political lens and just look at reality. General, all weekend we've heard about the tragic death, obviously, of Captain Khan, who served the military and lost his life on behalf of protecting us. And we heard his father and now this flap with Trump. What do you make of it all, sir?
Well, first of all, I lost my son in 2004 in Special Forces.
I'm sorry.
So I can speak from a father that's lost his son. Now, once Khan got up there and supported Hillary Clinton, he became political. And he was used basically as a pawn. And I don't think families should be used that way. Of course, you can look on Mrs. Smith on the other side, too, and these people. So it's a very delicate thing. But certainly as citizens, they can get up and freedom of speech. They can say what they want to. But if you look at the Khans, they basically, from what I understand in their background, are Muslim Brotherhood supporters or sympathizers. And they believe in the number of Muslims coming from these radicalized populations in the Middle East coming to the United States. So he's got some political baggage as well. Now, on the Trump side, I would have said it a little differently. I would have said, well, I respect the fact that he lost his son, they lost their son, and we can all be sympathetic towards that. But on the other hand, once he's a political pawn up there and he starts attacking me personally, saying that I've sacrificed nothing, never said, Hillary Clinton's never sacrificed anything in regards to a son or daughter being lost in combat. So it works both ways. If you're going to get up there and put yourself out, you're going to attack another candidate, then you become political, and then you are open to be attacked yourself, is my opinion, even what I say on radio or television.
No, look, I think you're spot on, General, and Hillary Clinton, they didn't question what she sacrificed, what Barack Obama sacrificed, what Hillary's husband Bill Clinton sacrificed. And frankly, what George Bush II sacrificed either. None of these people sacrificed anything. So I thought the accusation was completely asinine. That didn't make any sense to me. But,
it didn't. It was all political.
It was all political. But, General, one thing that was missing, he said, had Trump's ban on Muslim countries immigrating here been in effect, I wouldn't have been in the United States, et cetera. I don't know the circumstances to that. But isn't it true that if Trump's ban was in place before San Bernardino, that those murders wouldn't have happened?
Well, of course they could have. What Trump is really saying, and what I'm saying is, you have to vet them. You just can't have all these refugees coming in without vetting them. And what Trump has said time and time again, we need a process to do this. We just can't leave people coming in from all over the world that are not standing in line to become citizens in here. So it's a vetting process. Now, I've met many of the Syrian refugees. I was in Vienna when they were getting off the trains. But when you don't vet a population out that's coming out of Syria, out of Iraq, out of Morocco, out of Somalia, and you allow them to come in here, then be recruited and influenced by the imams in the mosque, you've got a problem. And so that's what Trump is really saying. And sure, we all have generations before us who came into the country, most of them legally.
Right.
And they're not illegal border crossers. They're not refugees. So there's a big difference from saying, well, I wouldn't have been here because, I would have been not vetted out, by the policies of the government to sustain and to encourage legal immigration.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a whole different process. You can't say, well, we're American, we have to accept everybody. It's like Angela Merkel. No, we don't.
Right.
We don't have to accept anybody into this country
right.
that will not stand by and support our Constitution, number
right.
one, and that can add something to our society.
Exactly. No, you're exactly
yeah.
right. And let me finish up here. General Paul Vallely with us, retired U.S. Army Major General. Let me just finish up with this one thing. When you look at the circumstance surrounding what has happened, you've spent a lot of time in the Middle East. Hillary Clinton is asking for another 100,000 Syrian refugees to come into the United States, $70,000 each minimum. Why aren't our allies in the Gulf states accepting any of them, like, for instance, Kuwait, who our blood liberated them, the Arab Emirates, Dubai, the Saudis? They're not accepting in a single Syrian refugee, and they're a few hundreds of miles away, yet we're expected to accept in another 100,000. Why?
Exactly. Well, they don't want them in there because they're infiltrated by radicals to a great degree. They don't want them in their country. If you took Medina and Mecca, you could put all those refugees there in the tents that they have for their annual gathering there at the Hajj. Mm-hmm. No, but they don't do it. And we don't have anybody in our government strong enough to get out there and negotiate anything like that. Trump's the only one I have confidence in can do that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to step up to the plate. You got to be firm with these leaders. You got to be firm with the president of Mexico,
right, that
allows so many illegal border crossers to transit through Mexico. So that's where we have to get tough. We've got to be understanding of the situation. We can be sympathetic. Americans give more money in humanitarian aid than any population in the world. So we have nothing to be ashamed of.
Exactly.
But it's got to be done in a logical, common sense way, John.
All right. I want to thank General Paul Vallely for being with us. General, we're out of time. Thank you so much for getting up early in Montana to be with us. Hopefully I'll see you this weekend or early next week in Wisconsin's 1st District. Hopefully I'll catch up with you up there. And, sir, thank you for being with us.